Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video we are going to take a look at painting a new Indomitus Necron from the new box set for 9th edition Warhammer 40,000. And as you can see here, we have the model already assembled, and I have it on a little alligator clip as I do not have this guy fastened to a base yet. So you can see he's bare plastic, and we are going to apply a layer of Stynylrez gloss black. We're going to use a airbrush, Badger Patriot 105, spraying at around, I think it was about 25 psi. Once it's all layered in, you can see, and dried, of course, we give it, it dries about 15-20 minutes. You can come in. We're going to use some mirror chrome from Spastics. This is an enamel-based paint. And we're going to use an airbrush, Patriot 105. Once again, we're going to spray it around just under 20 psi. It's around 20 psi. We'll just say it's 20 psi. And we are going to lay this on top of this gloss black. Now, I highly recommend using a gloss primer when you're laying down metallics. And of course, with these kinds of metallics, this chrome from Spastics. Where'd my model go? Oh, there he is. And once he's all set and done, you can see that it is all nice and shiny and chrome. This is really, really fun. And you can pretty much leave it as is. Color the gun in whatever color you want. But I am going to apply a layer of Pledge. This is my common go-to gloss varnishing for models. And so I just give it a quick little layering of that. And of course, it does not interrupt with the chrome effect. And also it sits on top of the chrome just fine. Now I did that so that when we move to this step right here, we are in good hands, and the paint will sit how we want and it'll go where we want. I'm using Nuln Oil Gloss, and I'm applying this fairly generously over the entirety of the model. Mainly, I'm just looking for it to gather in recesses in the typical fashion in which we apply this stuff, but I am not too concerned if it deepens up any of the tone on any of the broader areas. Now, there's all sorts of little nooks and crannies, dents and divots on these models, and this will pool into those areas. If you're not really looking to go for that kind of look or get too deep into some of those areas, then I highly recommend you pull the color out if you're going to follow this kind of guide. And of course, with this chrome Necron look, it definitely has sort of a kind of a T800 kind of look, and I think I'm going to roll with that for the rest of this scheme. So once that is all dry, you see I didn't hit the gun because now I'm going to use contrast black Templar. We're going to use this straight out of the bottle and directly apply it to where we want on the gun itself. So I'm applying it onto the handle, pretty much the entirety of the gun, really, except the little coils, and also, the end of the blade as well, I do recall. You can see here, I'm just simply moving this around. I was being a little bit more deliberate where I was applying it. Then I said, screw it. And I began just laying it right on. And if I didn't really want it to go anywhere that I didn't want, say, for example, like the cutting edge of this blade here, you can see there's a little bit there. I just simply wipe it with my finger and I get a nice clean edge on that space. And you can see we're pretty happy with that. Once it's dry and it finishes with a nice matte finish, or semi-matte finish, I'm going to come in with a second layer and deepen up some of the color in some of these areas. And of course, it also allows us to fill in any areas that we may have missed before. I want to deepen up the barrel and these little wires and cords and such, so I will lay another layer on top of those. Next, I'm going to take titanium white. This is from the Golden paint line. That's their high flow paint line. And I'm also going to use some Liquitex Flow Aid, just 2 drops into that little drop of titanium white. A thorough mixing into the entire dollop of paint on my palette, and I'm going to take a fairly generous amount of water and just mix it into a bit of the white so that I thin it out just a little bit more to help the flow. And basically we're just going to touch the little areas where we want this white to build. And you can see here, if it hits any of the big broad surfaces on the area, I just simply wipe it out, the excess away with my finger. I'm not too worried about pulling contrast paint or anything like that because, not that worried about it. So you can see we just simply tap it into where we want. I'm going to tap this into the coils as well. And you can see some of the chrome is still showing on the coils. And that is fine because that's going to give us an interesting little look later on as well. So I apply it into the little divots on the barrel, the coils on the gun. And I also dotted the eyes on the skull. I didn't show that part just because I missed that. Next is fluorescent paint from Vallejo. This is Magenta. I'm also going to add a drop of Liquitex Flow Aid to this as well. Not a lot of water. In fact, I think it's just the dampness of the brush I used. And you can see here, I'm just tapping it into where we had previously laid the white down. And basically, we're just going to run this into all those little areas as we had done before. Don't worry if you get in any of the magenta on top of any of the black area or anything like that, because we can always clean that up afterwards. And it is not very noticeable. This fluorescent paint is really quite translucent when you look at it. And of course, here I'm also dotting the eyes, and basically I pretty much just fill it into the little socket of the eye, allowing most of the white to kind of poke through, and that was giving me the kind of eye glow that I was mostly happy with. It was a little bit heavy on the on that left hand side, so I dry my brush off and then just simply like a little syringe suck the excess paint right out of there, and you can see there we just pull that right out. And of course, now we've got this nice little glow, and of course, it's starting to feel kind of, I can hear that music, that dun-dun-dun. And next, I'm going to grab just some pure magenta, and I'm going to put this into the little deep end corners of the coil area, just on the high point and the low point down here, leaving it a little bit brighter towards where the coils get a little bit brighter. And running down the barrel, those little circular forms, the two circles that are closest to the coils, I'm going to apply this around the majority, but then I only do half on the other two, just to kind of give the indication of a gradient in there. Now, with these fluorescent colors, they are very bright, and it's really actually to the eye, it's almost hard to see some of the transitions. I'm taking a little bit of the titanium white, adding it to the eyeballs, again, just to kind of strengthen up that brightness. And because I also want to get a little bit more of that fluorescent tone in there, I also grab a little bit more magenta and lay it inside the eye sockets. I pulled it out too much before because I just wasn't happy with how it was looking initially, but then once it had dried and settled down, I could see where I wanted to add more color and create more intensity in those eyes. And that is pretty much it. That is the Necron Chrome. It's pretty easy. It's not too hard. This is a quick way of getting these guys done. You can pretty much hammer these out pretty quickly here. I just simply took some astro granite, laid it onto the base, painted that little rock that was next to his foot in Dawnstone, I believe it was, and then black Abaddon black around the rim. And you could probably whip these suckers out in no time flat. Again, it's just simply chrome with a black on top, and then pick out the little magenta areas. I mean, if you really want to highlight, I mean, the contrast on top of the metallics works really, really nicely and gives you those highs and lows just like contrast always does. Big thank you to all my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below and it'll take you off to a magical website called Patreon, where there are varying tiers you can support at. Take care of those brushes and they will take care of you. They will, I swear.